At the very outset, I want to thank all of you, especially Dr. Abhijit Maitro and Dr. Sushil Kumar, connected with the Central Institute for Research on Cattle, ICAR, Meerut, for having accorded this invitation to me to share my ideas on this important subject of world peace. We all know what is the world going through now, and what it has been going through in the past. There has always been turmoils and peacelessness in the history. We all know this very well. And if I am not wrong, I think this program is being held to commemorate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which is a program which is being encouraged by the central government, and it's very timely and it is a very important one. India has finished 75 years of its political independence, but there is another side to it. Though we have become politically free, I feel that we are still ruled by the English psychologically and ideologically. The next big freedom, attainment of the freedom, will be this freedom from the psychological domination, ideological domination of the West on India. This will be the next big freedom which we have to attain, and we are not yet free from that. And this kind of a domination of the West on the Indian minds, the Indian young generation today, that is happening through the present education system, which needs to be very urgently revised so that we can connect our younger generation to our own roots. The day when we will find our youngsters, our boys and girls, proud about their heritage, cultural and civilizational heritage, when they will understand who their ancestors were and they will revel in that pride, that will be the day when we can say that we have become truly independent. Before that, this political independence is just a stepping stone towards the attainment of that real independence. That will be the independence from the Western domination, psychologically and ideologically. Anyway, today we are here to just discuss this subject of Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda and world peace. Now, there is no need for me to say that this is a very important subject, because we all have gone through, historically speaking, phases of relative peace and also phases of turmoil and turbulence throughout the human history. And if we look into the past, we find that the phases of relative peace has been shorter compared to the phases of turbulence and turmoil. In fact, the history is dominated by prolonged periods of wars and strifes, invasions and persecutions. This has been the nature of human history. When we study history, we find this is happening. Now the next question comes, what is the cause, or what is that thing which goes into the emergence of a peaceful phase in human society? We need to understand this very clearly. And what is that which brings about so-called a turbulent phase or a phase of peacelessness? Definitely we have to find out the causes. When we understand the causes, what causes peace in society, what causes stability in society, and what is the cause of turbulence and turmoil in society, then we can go and remove this problem from its very roots. Now, I want to first make one point very clear, that this subject is a very vast subject, and we have just hardly less than an hour with us. So it is not possible to go into the details of this issue. So I'm not going into the details of it. I'm not going to discuss this problem from the political standpoint, going into the details of who did what and why there is peacelessness in society. I'm not going into the details of it. My approach to the subject is going to be just present a broad, a general outline of the subject, keeping before you mainly the bird's eye view of this issue without going into the details of it. Now, we have to understand one thing. In this creation, there are two forces which are constantly working. The first force is the force of extrovertness, the force which makes us go out and act in the outside world. The other force which works in this universe is the force of inwardness, the force which takes us inward into our own self or into the depths of our own being. These are the two forces which are constantly working in this creation. This is from the standpoint of the Vedic wisdom. In the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in the Vedanta, you will find this is the presentation of this entire creation. And this entire creation, we have these two forces constantly working. The force which throws us outside and makes us extrovert, makes us run after the things. And the other force is the force which makes us go inside to our own roots. Now, if these two forces are in a state of balance, when there is a perfect balance between our extrovert tendency as well as our inward tendency, then we have a relative state of peace and stability in human society. As I said in the beginning, I am going to discuss this subject purely from the bird's eye viewpoint. I'm not going into the details of it. So, now when we talk about these two forces, one is the force which throws us outside, and the other is the force which makes us go inside. Now, the force which functions and makes us go outside, in that also there are two categories. One is when that force which throws us outside is based on righteousness, it is based on dharma, it brings about material prosperity and well-being of the whole society. And again, there is second type of this extrovertness, that is when that force which is throwing us outside, when it is based on purely on pride, arrogance, lust, greed, passion, and sense of hatred, when these are the devilish tendencies which guide our extrovertness, then that force turns out to be destructive. Not only destructive, it becomes the cause of unending turmoil and strife in human society. Once again, I repeat, this force of extrovertness, it is of two kinds. It can be based on dharma and righteousness. When it is based on dharma and righteousness, it will bring about material prosperity and well-being to all. But if this extrovertness is based upon devilish tendencies like pride, arrogance, greed, passion, lust, and hatred, then this extrovertness is going to bring about turmoil and turbulence in human society. Now, this is the general phenomenon which we can note, which is happening in human society from the ageless past. Now, in all such situations where there is an imbalance between these two forces, forces which throw us outside as well as the force which makes us go inside, when there is a gross and notable imbalance, when the forces of extrovertness become stronger and the force of inwardness becomes weaker, and over and above that, this force of extrovertness, when it becomes guided by the devilish tendencies of lust, anger, passion, and hatred, then comes that phase of human society where you will find there is continuous turmoil and turbulence and peacelessness. If you look into the present situation all over the world, this Ukraine and Russia war, what is it actually motivated by? It is this extrovertness, this force of extrovertness which is guided by arrogance. The force of extrovertness which is guided by the devilish tendencies of lust, greed, passion, and hatred for a certain race. It is that which is actually goes into the emergence of this kind of a peaceless and turbulent society. Now, if you look back into the history, this is the story of the entire human race from timeless past. This is what has been happening. As I said, whenever there is a perfect balance between the forces of inwardness and the forces of extrovertness, that will be the phase of so-called relative peace and stability in human society. So whenever in human society we find this imbalance is lost and the forces, the devilish tendencies, they begin to dominate our outgoing tendencies, in all such situations, we note that the divine being comes down in a human form to once again bring about a balance between these two forces. And in and through the bringing of this balance, that divine being slowly ensures the emergence of a so-called relatively peaceful state of stability and peace. Such a divine being is what we actually, in our Vedic tradition, we refer to them as incarnations or avatars. Every time the avatara comes to bring about this kind of a balance into the society, a society which has become totally imbalanced. You all know the famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamya. Whenever there is an increase in adharma, and dharma is overpowered by adharma, then what happens? This kind of an imbalance takes place. Then in order to ensure the peace and stability of this world and creation, that infinite being, that Ishvara, comes down in the form of an avatar. And he tries to bring about this kind of a balance between these two forces, which is constantly working in human society. Now, from time immemorial, we see at different junctures of human history, different incarnations have come. If you go back, we have Ram, Krishna, Buddha, Shankaracharya. And in the most modern times, in our own times, we have that very Ishvara, that Ishvara who had come in the form of Ram in the past, that Ishvara who had come in the form of Krishna in the past, that very Ishvara today has come in the form of Ramakrishna. And Ramakrishna brought Swami Vivekananda along with him to fulfill his mission of Dharma Sanstapana, to bring about this balance which is lost in the modern times. Now, in short, we can say that when the incarnation comes, or today if we look into the situation, if Vivekananda has come to bring about a drastic change in the human society. He has come to change the human society in a very foundational manner. Now, if I remember, a very famous thinker speaking about Vivekananda, he had said that Vivekananda was that heroic soul who was destined to take the world between his two hands and change it. What a beautiful observation it is. He says that Vivekananda is that heroic soul who was destined to take this world between his two hands and change it. he had come to change this world, as if it is said that when Vivekananda went to West from India, he was as if he was going to hold the entire world between his two hands and change it. Swamiji himself has spoken about himself in a certain situation, in a certain place. I think it is in London, where he says his one wish is to give a new civilization to the world. I think it was in 1896 in London, where Swami Vivekananda, he is speaking about his own work. In 1893, Vivekananda went to America. We all know that. And this work of changing the world in a very foundational manner, by giving some root ideas to the entire human race, that process was initiated by Vivekananda in 1893. And after 2.5 years of hard labor in America, Swamiji, when he came to England, in London, he makes this statement about his work. Very beautifully he says, in America, I have just started my work. I have just raised a few waves. Please note his words. It is so beautiful and so suggestive. Swamiji is saying, in America, I have just started my work. I have just raised a few waves. We have to raise a tidal wave. The society has to be turned upside down. The world has to be given a new civilization. Once again, I repeat his words. He says that the world has to be given a new civilization. Swamiji has come to change the world, as it was stated before. He was that heroic soul who was destined to take the world between his two hands and change it. Vivekananda himself speaks about himself in this very language, in this very line. He wanted to give a new civilization to the world. Now the next question comes, what can bring about this kind of a new civilization? When we talk about new civilization, that itself connotes certain things. A new civilization, why there is a need of a new civilization? Because the present civilization, the present human society as it is existing, in this condition here, the two forces which I referred to in the beginning, they are in a state of imbalance. Today, the forces of extrovertness is so strong, and that force of extrovertness is guided by the devilish tendencies of lust, anger, passion, and hatred. That is why there is so much of adharma. Adharma is completely subjugating dharma, and that is why there is a state of peacelessness, strife, and turmoil all over. This is our present situation, the present civilization. Vivekananda wants to bring about a new civilization where there will be a perfect balance between the forces of extrovertness and the force of inwardness. And in the force of extrovertness, that extrovertness will be based upon dharma, will be based upon righteousness. This is precisely the role of avatara. Every time when the avatara comes for this very purpose. And now, you see, now when we are talking about Vivekananda having come to change this world, to change the human society, not physically, but ideologically, by giving the right ideas, the foundational ideas, the ideas which will slowly make the human society shift from the path of unrighteousness to righteousness. And that righteous tendencies will be balanced by a perfect spiritual base. This is the kind of balance which has to be brought about, and this is the mission of every avatar. Vivekananda also came for this very purpose. Now, when we talk about Vivekananda having come down to bring about this kind of a change, the next very important question is we need to understand a little bit what is this personality called Vivekananda, whom we are referring to. Vivekananda has been the source of inspiration for everybody in India and the world. In the world, I would not say, but definitely when it comes to the modern India, the India of today, he stands at the top, the very Himalaya of inspiration. We all know this. That's why there is a need to understand what this phenomenon called Vivekananda is. It's very vital to understand this point. Now, how do we understand that? One of the finest evaluations, or one of the finest observation about who this Vivekananda is found in Sister Nivedita's statement. Nivedita very beautifully says, Nivedita, you all know, Sister Nivedita was the disciple of Swami Vivekananda, and she came all the way from England to India following her Guru to fulfill the mission of her Guru, and she dedicated her life completely to working for the well-being of Indian women and for India's freedom. It's an extraordinary life and an extraordinary story. The details of that, we are not going to take it up now, but this is the brief introduction of this wonderful personality called Sister Nivedita. And her Guru was Swami Vivekananda. And mentioning about her Guru, Swami Vivekananda, whom she had watched very closely. She had a very close association, and she had learnt everything from this great master called Swami Vivekananda. So talking about Swami Vivekananda, Sister Nivedita says that Vivekananda is made up of three things. If you look into Swami Vivekananda's personality, you will see that Vivekananda is made up of three things. What are these three things? Number one, Shastras. Number two, Bharat. Number three, his own Gurudev, Sri Ramakrishna. Now, to go into the details of these 3 points, what do we mean by Shastra? By Shastra is meant the great, universal, scientific, spiritual teachings of Vedic Hindu Sanatana Dharma. He was the very embodiment of the universal, scientific, spiritual wisdom of Hindu Sanatana Dharma. This is what she means by Shastra. Vivekananda was the very embodiment of that, number one. Number two, Swami Vivekananda was the very reflection of Bharat. He was Bharat. And number three, that he was made up of the great wisdom coming from his own Guru, Sri Ramakrishna. How perfectly correct this observation is about Swami Vivekananda. If you look into Swami Vivekananda's literature, we see that you may turn any of the pages of Vivekananda's literature, or even if you are studying his life, you will find that these are the three things out of which this great personality called Vivekananda is made. Any page you turn, either he is talking about the great spiritual wisdom of the Vedic Hindu Sanatana Dharma, or he is talking about his country, his motherland, Bharat, with such pride, which is something unparalleled, or he is speaking about his Gurudev, Sri Ramakrishna. This sums up the whole personality of Swami Vivekananda. You poke Vivekananda from any side, any corner, you will find one of these three things. Either he is talking about Bharat, or he is talking about his Gurudev, or I would say a major chunk of Swamiji's literature is the universal, scientific, spiritual wisdom and teachings of this immortal system called the Hindu Vedic Sanatana Dharma. He was the greatest spokesperson of this ideology. See, now we are going to the roots of this whole issue. We need the right ideology which can bring about this peace into the human society. Where is that ideology? That is the question. And what did Swami Vivekananda preach throughout his life? He preached this. So, in short, we need to first understand what Vivekananda is. According to Nivedita, he was made up of these three things. Now, Swamiji himself has spoken something about himself. That is also equally interesting. At one place, Swamiji says, and he refers to himself as condensed India. Swamiji says that I am condensed India. If we take India and condense it into a human form, that form will be Swami Vivekananda. Whenever you look at Swami Vivekananda, whenever we study Swami Vivekananda's works, Swami Vivekananda's form and his ideas are the door or the window in and through we actually enter into the soul of India. Opening Swami Vivekananda means you are entering that door in and through which you can enter into the soul of India, Bharat. That is the beauty of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was the very condensed human form of Bharat. Bharat and Bharatiya Sanskriti and Bharatiya Sabhyata. So, this is the first very important point which we should keep in mind, that we need to understand what this phenomenon called Swami Vivekananda is. Vivekananda is nothing but the condensed form of the Hindu Sanatana Dharma's universal and scientific ideology, number one. And he is also the condensed form of India's age-old culture and civilization. And number three, he was made up of the great wisdom coming from his own Gurudev, Sri Ramakrishna. In short, he represented India's foundational ideology, which is Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma, and he represented India's culture and civilization. If we have to understand India, we have to study Vivekananda. Somebody had told, Rabindranath Tagore writes to Romarola, the French Nobel laureate, who wanted to know more about India, had asked Rabindranath Tagore that I want to know about India. How do I do that? Tagore wrote back to Romarola, said, if you want to know India, study Vivekananda. How true it is. Studying Vivekananda means you're getting into the very soul of India, the very soul of Indian foundational thought system, which is the Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma thought system. Now, as I said, now what do we understand by Vivekananda? Vivekananda means the Hindu Sanatana Dharma ideology. That is at the basis. He was the concrete form of that. Now we are coming to the base ideological facet of this issue, because it is this ideology which is going to bring about a change in human society. We should understand that human beings are all driven by ideas. Ideas can be good, ideas can be bad, ideas can be misleading, it can take us in different directions. Everything depends upon the ideas. The kind of ideas that we have in our mind also determines the direction in which we shall be moving. If we have the right ideology, the person moves in the right direction. If the society has got the right ideology, the entire society begins to move in the right direction. So that's the importance of ideas, the powerful ideas. So what is that ideology which can bring about peace and stability to human society? That is the big question. According to Vivekananda, if there is one thought system which has got that power and potency to bring about a radical change in the way the human beings conduct themselves individually as well as collectively all over the world, that ideology is the ideology of the Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma. And that is the one thing which he had preached throughout the world. Now, what is that which is so special about this Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma ideology? This is very important, which we should understand. Swami Vivekananda, it's not possible for us to go into the details of this issue because that itself is a very independent subject which we can discuss separately and in details. Now, when we talk about this Hindu system of thought, certain things comes to our mind. What are the central teachings of this Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma? The central teachings of Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma is, I'll just enumerate a few points. Number one, it teaches that every soul is divine. Number two, it says that at the core of this creation is that divinity. So this entire creation is divine. Everything is divine. Nothing is separated from divinity. Number three, to experience this divine, I am using the word experience. This is what actually keeps Hindu Sanatana Dharma totally separated from so-called all other religions. Hindu Sanatana Dharma is an experiential system. It's a system which stands on anubhuti and not just belief. All the Semitic faiths, they're all belief systems, whereas the Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma is something which stands on experience. We can experience the divinity. And the divinity has to be experienced. It can be experienced. There are ways and methods to experience it. So the very goal of human life is to experience this divinity. And there are any number of ways and methods to reach this divinity. And this is what the great rishis, perhaps somewhere on the banks of the Ganges, maybe somewhere on the banks of Saraswati or say Indus, we don't know, Sindhu Nadi, some rishi has declared a great proclamation he made ages ago. And what is that proclamation? He said, a very magnanimous, and Swami Vivekananda says this is the greatest teaching and the greatest utterance ever made in human history. What is that? Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. Truth is one. Sages call it variously. Just imagine. This great wisdom was uttered by Rishi at such a time, where other so-called the modern European and Western American civilization were not even born. At a time where other civilizations and cultures were still in the womb of posterity. At that time, from this Bharat, where this Vaidika Hindu Sanatana Dharma flourished, at that time this great Rishi makes this great utterance, and it tells and declares to the entire world that the truth is one. There are no two truth. We are all seeking that truth, no matter in which form. And that truth is known by various names, and it can be approached by various methods. This is the greatest teaching that has come out of this Vedika Hindu Sanatana Dharma thought system. And Swami Vivekananda says something very beautifully. I will just read out that portion, what Swamiji says about this great teaching. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. Swamiji says, the whole history of India you may read in these few words. What is history of India? Swamiji says the entire history of India can be read in these few words. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. The whole history of India has been a repetition of this one central doctrine. It was repeated in this land till it had entered into the blood of the nation, till it began to tingle with every drop of blood that flowed in its veins, till it became one with the life. It has become the very central keynote of our national life and national character. And Swami Vivekananda says, and thus this India, great land, this Bharat, has become transmuted into the most wonderful land of toleration, giving the right to welcome the various religions as well as the sects into the old mother country. What a beautiful observation it is. Swamiji says that this central teaching, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti, this is what has been repeated in Bharat from ageless past. And it has been repeated so many times that it has got into the very blood of its people, and it has become the very national character and national life itself. To such an extent that Bharat has become the land where it has been transformed into a land of not only toleration but sympathy for all the other religions coming from the other parts of the world. So this is the great importance of this teaching called Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. That is why you see, if you just look into the Indian society, what do we find in India? There is some disturbance.
There's some disturbance.
I request everybody to mute their microphones, please.
Anil Kumarji, if you can mute your mic, please.
Yeah, yes, I will try.
Please. Yeah, Manaji, please go ahead.
Yeah. So we were discussing the importance of this great teaching called Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti, where Swamiji says that this one thing has got into the very blood of the national life, and it has transformed Bharat into a land of not only toleration but sympathy for all those religions which has come from outside. Now see, this is a very important fact, a very important point. Where on earth such a phenomenon has ever taken place, or where on earth such a phenomenon exists even today? This is a very important point. In every other society, if you just see, there is only persecution of those people who don't believe in your thought system. Now, we all know very well, 2,000 years of Christian history, 2,000 years of Islam, 1,400 years of Islamic history. What is this history? And history which is soaked and written in blood, persecution, and whatnot, invasions, mass genocides, wiping out of civilizations. Where are those, the pre-Christian civilizations of Europe? Where is the real Europe? The real Europe is dead long back. Where is the real America? It's dead long back. It has been Christianized. And similarly, with all these Middle East countries, where are those pre-Islamic civilizations? They all have been wiped out. So there are two thought systems working in the world. One which believes that anyone who doesn't follow my system, wipe that race from the face of earth, kill it. They are meant to be killed. They don't have any right. Either they have to be converted or they have to be killed. This is one ideology which has dominated the Semitic faith systems and which we see in human history. And this has been one of the main reasons for the the continuous kind of strife and turbulence and disturbance which we see in human society. Contrasting to this, what do we find in India? You see this India where people and the religions which has come from outside, they all have been welcomed here. They all have been given respectful place here. Is it because of the Constitution of India? When was this Constitution born? This is a very big question. India is not like this because of the Constitution of India. Nobody in India is having this welcoming nature because of something has been stated in the Constitution. They have this welcoming nature because that is there in their blood. This ideology that no matter in which way a person approaches the divine, he may be praying in a different way. No matter in which way he does something is religiously, but he understands that they are all worshipping the same divine. That's why there is a sense of respect, a sense of toleration, a sense of sympathy, which is so natural to the Hindu mindset. That is why this Hindu society is the only society where this respect for the other religions, respect for other communities is so natural, because the basic teaching is that everything is divine. Now, contrasting to this, Swami Vivekananda says, I will just read that portion. Contrasting to this, Swamiji says, there is tremendous religious persecution yet in every country in which I have been. These are Swamiji's words. I'm just reading his words. He is saying there is tremendous religious persecution yet in every country in which I have been. Swamiji is saying this in the 1890s. This is an old problem. He is saying that there is a tremendous religious persecution in every country. The little toleration that is in the world, the little sympathy that is yet in the world for religious thought is practically here in the land of the Aryas, in the land of the Hindus. This Bharat, this is the land where there is toleration and sympathy. Nowhere else, Swamiji says. The little toleration that is in the world, the little sympathy that is yet in the world for religious thought is practically here in the land of Aryas, the land of Vedas, this Hindu Bhumi, this Bharata Bhumi. And it is practically here in the land of Aryas and nowhere else. He says, nowhere else. If you go to the other countries and ask Mohammedans or people of other religions to build a temple for you, see how they will help. They will instant try to break down your temple, and you too, if they can. The one great lesson, therefore, that the world wants most, the world has yet to learn from India or the Hindus is this idea of not only toleration but sympathy. This is the one lesson that the world has to learn from this Hindu Samaj. This Hindu Samaj only is the one Samaj where it is so naturally practiced. We never destroy somebody's structures just like that. But they have been attacking us. That is another issue. We should not be one-sided. Because Hindu Samaj is so filled with the idea of sympathy and toleration, it is considered to be weak, perhaps. And these Semitic faiths have been constantly attacking the Hindu society. In fact, it is not wrong to say that the Hindu race is the one race which has faced persecution and invasion for the longest period in the history. The Hindu race is the one race which has faced this persecution and invasion for such a long period of time. And it is even now it is going on. We all know that, how we are being attacked, this Samaj. They want to wipe out the Hindu thought system from the face of the earth. But how much ever they try, it's not happening. In fact, Swamiji says, the more this Hindu society is attacked, the more strongly it bounces back. That is the power of the system. There is some divine strength in it. For thousands of years of persecution, and yet this Hindu Samaj, this Bharatiya Samaj is standing strong, and it is bouncing back to respond to this kind of a situation. It is defending itself. And even in defense, it is also going offensive sometimes, perhaps which is the need of the time. Because if this society survives, then this thought system will survive. And it is this thought system alone which can save the entire world. That is the importance of preserving this thought system. For this thought system to be preserved, the society has to be alive. So Swamiji says, the one great lesson, therefore, that the world wants most, the world has yet to learn from India, is the idea not only of toleration, but of sympathy. Therefore, we have again to learn the one central truth that was preached only here in our motherland, and that has to be preached once more from India. Why? Because not only is it in our books, but it runs through every phase of our national literature and is in the national life. Here and here alone is it practiced every day, and any man who has eyes open can see that it is practiced here and here alone. So these are beautiful Swami's observation. This idea of Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, this is the greatest utterance ever made in the human history. And this is not just an utterance. This has been a living way of life for the Indians, for the Hindus. It is these Hindus which go into the making of Bharat. And if this Hindu Samaj is alive, and if this thought system is alive, it is this thought which can bring about a change in the entire world scenario. Because nowhere else this thought is existing, even today. Even today, among those people, their ideology is that anyone who doesn't belong to their ideology or their religion, their only fate and only destiny is either conversion or destruction. So this is the kind of fight between two ideologies, we may say. And the ideology which can bring about true peace in society is this Hindu ideology, which will teach the entire human race to respect everybody. So that is the importance of this great teaching. That is why Swami Vivekananda says, this great Vedic Hindu Sanatana Dharma system has to be kept alive. If it is alive, India is alive. India means this Hindu Vedika Sanatana Dharma culture and thought system. That is what goes into the making of Bharat. Without this Hindu Vedika Sanatana Dharma thought system, there is no India, number one. And this has to be alive. It should not die. Swami Vivekananda says, shall India die? If this thought system dies, if this society dies, the Hindu society which practices this, if this dies out of persecution or whatever it is, what will happen? Swamiji says, then from the world all spirituality will be extinct. All moral perfection will be extinct. All sweet-souled sympathy for religion will be extinct. All ideality will be extinct. Wherever there is spirituality, morality, ideality, this sweet-souled sympathy for other religions, religions which have come from the other lands, that toleration, that sympathy, it is only in India. And if this India dies, that spirituality is gone, that morality is gone, that ideality is gone, and that toleration and sympathy for the other religions, it's all gone. What will be left is only dogmatism, fanaticism, and which takes its form in the form of, say, persecution and terrorism. We all know this very well. So, such a thing can never be, Swamiji says. So, there is a big Hindu revival. We all know that it is happening all over the world. And Swamiji says that those that think that the present revival of Hinduism, Swamiji says, those that think that the present revival of Hinduism is only a manifestation of patriotic impulse, they are deluded. Do not think that it has got nothing to do with politics. It has got nothing to do with patriotism. This Hindu revival, it is a need of the time. It is a very divine need. If the world has to be put on the track of perfect balance, as I said in the beginning, there has to be a balance between the forces of extrovertness and the forces of inwardness. If this balance has to be brought back, that can be brought back by this great universal scientific thought systems of Hinduism. That is why there is a revival. It is a divine arrangement. It has got nothing to do with some patriotic impulse or politics. It is in and through the living force of this Hindu thought, the Vedic Sanatana Dharma scientific thought, the world can once again be taken back to its balanced state, and the state of peace can be ensured. So, this great teaching can go from India and India alone. Swamiji has again and again he has spoken about this. He says, once again the world has to be conquered by the Hindu thought. Several places he mentioned this. Once again the world has to be conquered by Indian spirituality. What is this Indian spirituality? This Indian spirituality means the spirituality of the Vedic Hindu Sanatana Dharma. He wanted the world to be conquered by this. That was his one mission. He used to say that that is the one dream of my life. And in one place he says that I want each one of you to have the same dream. That as long as India, this Indian thought, doesn't conquer the entire world, we have to work. Indians have to be awakened. Hindus have to be awakened. They should be taken back to their roots. It is this universal, scientific, broad, large-hearted thought system. It is this thought system alone which can bring back balance into this imbalanced state in which the society is today. Another great teaching which I will just point out and then I will stop my talk. That is a beautiful teaching. This again you will not find in anywhere in this world. That is the teaching of a beautiful teaching which comes in the Upanishad. It says, Ayam nija parovaiti ganana laguchetasam udaracharitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. Such teachings we don't find anywhere in the world literature, in no other race. And this is not just a teaching. Indians, Hindus have lived it. For us, vasudhaiva kutumbakam. Vasudha, this planet itself is one family. Who can speak like this? The Muslims can talk about their own brotherhood, the brotherhood between two Muslims. But what about the Muslims and the non-Muslims? The non-Muslims have got only one fate, either convert or die. Christianity, what their brotherhood is of the brotherhood of their own people. But what about the Christians and non-Christians? There is no equation. Everybody who is a non-Christian, either they have to be converted or they have a different fate. It is this Hindu thought system alone which talks about the entire world being one family, no matter which thought system you follow. This respect, this toleration, this sympathy, this is the one great lesson which has to go from India and India alone. And Vivekananda was the great spokesperson of this thought. It is this thought system which is going to bring about peace and stability. It is a long, long process. It is not going to happen all of a sudden, but it is happening in the last 120 years since Vivekananda emerged on the Western platform. And he declared this to the entire world, declared the glory of India, glory of Hinduism, the glory of the Hindu thought. The world has started to change. It is happening. Larger and larger numbers of people are coming back to this scientific system of thought, and they are taking it very seriously, and thus a slow and silent transformation is underway. It is happening unknown and in silence, and it will happen. It will take some time, but the society has to move in this direction. This is how India has to become awakened. The Hindu Samaj has to be awakened. The Hindu Samaj has to become united and strong. It is this awakened Hindu Samaj and Bharatiya Samaj, this alone can bring about this transformation in the entire world. This is the one idea which Swami Vivekananda hammers again and again, which we Hindus ourselves, we have not taken it very seriously. That is why we have to connect all our youngsters, our boys and girls, our students to our own roots. Do they know anything about Bhagavad Gita? Our own Hindu boys and girls, do they know anything about Ramayana and Mahabharata, the glory of it? Do they have a sense of pride about their ancestors? They don't, because they have not been told about it. And in this respect, a great culprit is our present education system. Our present education system needs to be revamped urgently. This I always tell all our brothers wherever I get a chance. This has to be done. The books like Ramayana and Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita and Yoga have to be introduced in the school. That is how we can take our children back to our roots. And once they feel proud about their ancestors, their universal grand thought system, which is nowhere in the world, once they take pride in that, that is how India will become great and glorious, and India will become an instrument to bring about a great global transformation. So this is the direction in which we have to move, and this is what I wanted to briefly present to all of you in the subject of Vivekananda and world peace. This is a very vast subject. I have not gone into the details, and I have not discussed this point from the standpoint of politics. I have just presented to you all a very broad outline to recapitulate the whole thing. What I wanted to say is that in this creation there are two forces. One force which takes us outward, and the other force which takes us inward. And as far as this force which takes us outward is concerned, in that also there are two categories. One is this outward going force. If it is based on righteousness, if it is based on dharma, it brings about material prosperity. If this very outward going force, if it is based upon lust, anger, greed, passion and hatred, it brings about peacelessness and instability in human society. To change the situation, the great people come. They want to bring a balance between this outward going force and inward going force. When that balance is brought back, then only the society begins to gain some kind of a relative peace and stability. This is the way in which we have to work. And that stability ensuring thought system, that peace ensuring thought system is the thought system of the Vedic Hindu Sanatana Dharma, which is an all-comprehensive, an all-embracing thought system. It does not exclude anybody. Though this is the one race which has been continuously attacked, even today it is being attacked. We know what is happening in India, how Hindu Samaj is being attacked, even in India itself. It is happening. But at the same time, this great Hindu force is bouncing back with all force. It has to work in its own defense, because this system has to be alive. It should survive, because in its survival is the survival of the entire world race. Because these ideas, these universal ideas which we can bring true transformation, is nowhere in the world, nowhere in the West. Swami Vivekananda in one place says, we think that we are educated. Where is education? Education, the true education has not even started. What is education? An education which does not teach us to have love and sympathy for the others. Is it an education? Education of just physics, science and chemistry doesn't make men. Where are the true men with that large heart who can embrace the entire world as one family? That is real education. That kind of a real education has not even started. Civilization has not even started, Vivekananda says. So to think that we are civilized and we are educated, it's a big question mark. Real education, real civilization will come when the human society will have the capability to embrace the entire world as one's own self. And that, to bring that, these great personalities like Vivekananda came. in our midst. So, dear friends, with this, I conclude my talk, and I think I have made my point clear to some extent at least. Thank you.